Boruto has done it yet again. The previous chapter of the story shocked everyone. Boruto died, and with that we were all glued to the story and online discussions, anxiously waiting to see what would come next. Well, the story is back now with chapter 67, and it did not disappoint. Code has managed to weasel his way out of the situation, Konoha may be in for a rude awakening, and Boruto is back and no longer human. And despite being back from the dead, it seems things are only going to get worse from here. In the previous chapter, Kawaki's newfound power brought devastation. Thanks to Amado's manipulation and shady medical procedures, Kawaki, despite previously losing his karma, was able to access it again. Now purely as a weapon with new abilities that we'd previously seen used by Ishiki, notably Daikokuten and Sukuna Hikona. Kawaki was being made into a new Ishiki, and that was clear to Code. However, Kawaki was at this time seemingly blind to what had been going on. You see, Amado essentially made it so that Kawaki would desire more power, and upon its return, it will feel like it was his choice to retake it. The reality was very different though. There was no choice. Amado had implanted this, and Sumire previously could discern that something was off about Amado, but still wasn't able to foresee this specific ending. With his new abilities, Kawaki would push back Boruto, who was being controlled by Momoshiki at this time. Kawaki would fight and seemingly had no intention of holding back. He was willing to go as far as necessary to protect Naruto. And even Naruto had to wonder about this because Kawaki was really out for blood here on pure demon time. The fight will go on, and following some great moves, Kawaki seemed to have secured victory, even here declaring game over. Despite knowing Shikamaru's life would be in danger if he dared to move, Naruto couldn't help but watch and swooped in, saving Boruto at the last second, robbing Kawaki of his victory. Pretty crazy here that Naruto straight up left Shikamaru to die right there while being held hostage by Code. He basically just said, if he dies, he dies. Shikamaru wouldn't die though, because Code really didn't see any benefit in ending that man's life right then and there. And what a great decision that was, because now with the latest chapter, Shikamaru ends up becoming Code's greatest weapon. Well, not the greatest considering he has Ada and Daemon on his side, as well as the white karma and so on. Code has a lot of really good assets, but a great opportunity has opened up thanks to sparing Shikamaru. After saving Boruto, Naruto would be furious with Kawaki, questioning how far Kawaki was willing to go and labeling him a demon at this moment. Code stayed with his stance that he was willing to do what was necessary. He was willing to do the hard things. Following that near death, Boruto would return and regain control of his body and make a bold decision. He'd come to the conclusion that it was time to resort to their final plan. While under the control of Momoshiki, he'd almost kill his own father. This was not sustainable. With that, Boruto would say his goodbyes, and Kawaki would deliver a lethal blow to his chest, piercing all the way through and leaving a lifeless body on the ground. And that brings us to chapter 67, which opens up with a beautiful color page of Ada. If you haven't already, by the way, be sure to drop a like on the video to help out the channel, and subscribe to not only this channel but also our new channel Plot Armor Comics, where we discuss Western comics like Spider-Man and Iron Man. We're having a lot of fun over there, be sure to check it out. The link to that will be in the description below. Now the chapter would open up with a lifeless Boruto on the ground while Naruto rushed in close, which I was glad to see, as well as the rest of Naruto's reaction, which follows later. The reactions to everything in the last chapter felt a little underwhelming for me personally, but now with this latest release, I was fully satisfied. Naruto, looking at the hole right through his son's body, couldn't believe what was happening. I mean, he lost his lifelong partner, Kurama, not that long ago, and now his son. The pain was cutting deep. Kawaki had an expression void of any emotion while everyone else took this in. Code would express how unexpected this was, and Ada, able to see everything, would echo this sentiment but reinforce how serious what had just happened was. Code saw none of this coming, Kawaki regaining his power and Boruto being killed, but for him, he knew he had to move on. Of course, life goes on. Ada would make sure to remind Code that he was not allowed to use Kawaki as a sacrifice. Upon her arrival into the story, she made it clear she was interested in him and he was not to be used by Code. And I love this panel where she expresses that. There isn't too much to it, but something about her eyes makes this shot cold. Code wouldn't be ready to discuss her reminders, and so would simply tell her they'll talk later. Code would then prepare his retreat, but before doing so, he'd remind Kawaki of one thing. Acquiring power won't change anything, referring to Kawaki's new karma abilities. He'd explain that Kawaki isn't free and will never be. Here referring to Amado's recent antics and Kawaki's history of being led. Not sure why Code thinks he's one to be giving life advice, but you know how it is, everyone of course likes to give their 2 cents. Code would then attempt to escape, but be stopped by his claw marks shrinking. It was Kawaki using Ishiki's abilities yet again. He wasn't finished just yet with Code. It's a bit funny because Code would literally just fall on his ass as if someone had pulled his chair as he was sitting down. Code immediately would understand it was Sukuna Ikona, the ability that can shrink anything. His claw marks were made so small they could not be used. Code would try again to no avail as Kawaki slowly walked closer. Kawaki would make it clear he would eliminate any threat to the Hokage. He went as far as to kill his own brother, so there's no reason to think Code would be spared. The battle was on. Kawaki would begin his attack, but Code would dodge. The two would begin fighting, but very quickly, it was clear Kawaki was in control. Code would recognize he's being overwhelmed very quickly. Shikamaru, no longer a hostage, would take the opportunity given by this fight and escape towards Naruto, who was now with Boruto. Naruto was now still over Boruto and trying to wake up his lifeless son. The sight of Boruto really dead made Shikamaru visibly disturbed. However, he kept his composure compared to Naruto, who was now out of sage mode as he took in the fact that his son was now gone. Shikamaru would try to alert Naruto to the situation. The battle was not over, but it wasn't working. Naruto felt like this was just a bad dream. It could not be real. And let me just say, this hurt me to see. A lot of us have grown up with Naruto in a way, and to see him always suffering at this point is just sad. You'd like to believe eventually that your main character would find happiness, and we're so late into the story of Naruto and he's still going through it, you know? We have not reached the promised land, it feels like, just yet. And not just the inevitable struggles of life, but really going through it. To lose both Kurama and Boruto back to back is just cruel. Let us know in the comments how you feel seeing this. How does it hit you? Personally, I'm tired of seeing Naruto suffer. Maybe I'm alone in that, but just leave Boruto to suffer and the rest of the Boruto cast. Leave Naruto alone. But anyway, back to the battleground. The fight between Kawaki and Code would continue while Shikamaru tried to alert Naruto to the situation. Naruto wasn't reacting to any of this though. Shikamaru could not reach him. Now desperately, Shikamaru would plead with Naruto, here reminding him that he is the Hokage and that Boruto made this choice for their sake. Kawaki meanwhile was giving Code the beats, and as he approached menacingly to deliver more, Code knew he was going to lose this. Kawaki would now aim his palm and charge a lethal blow similar to how he ended Garo. Confident now because of how the fight was going, Kawaki made it clear there would also be no mercy for the person who wanted to meet him, here referring to Ada, who he's yet to meet. At the last second before Kawaki fired one hell of an attack, Code reached through the mark on his head. The blast would devastate the area, and if you expected Code to be down for the count, you'd be wrong. It was Kawaki who was down and out like a light. The victor, to everyone's surprise, was Code. Code pulled the ultimate reverse Uno. This counter was through the use of Daemon. Code had used the same ability he was attempting to use for escaping to bring Daemon here as a weapon. It's been a while since we last saw his ability in action, but essentially any attack on Daemon will be reflected to the attacker. Even the mental image of the killing is enough to be redirected. So yeah, Daemon is pretty damn useful. He's not meant to be used as a shield, but hey, Code improvised greatly here. Without warning, Code had grabbed and awoken Daemon to save his own skin, and it worked perfectly. Shikamaru had no idea who Daemon was, so this was a shocker and new intel for Konoha. Daemon was ready to help out, but for Code, this was enough. It was time to retreat. Ada would again warn Code that if Kawaki wasn't alright after that attack, Code would be certain to regret it. A little annoyed by this, Code would put Ada at ease and confirm Kawaki still had a pulse. Although, as Ada would point out, this was for Code's own good, because had the answer been different, she would have had Daemon finish him off. To me, it feels like there's slight tension building between these two. Nothing too serious yet, but it's beginning to feel more and more like they're going to eventually clash in some way. Not in a fight because the outcome would be clear, but someone is likely to be betrayed. Code would acknowledge that he really doesn't stand a chance against Kawaki as things are now, and again bring up the removal of his limiters. As strong as Code is now, we do know there were limiters put on his powers, which can only be removed by Amato. Definitely looking forward to seeing what full power Code is like. It'll be greater than the powers of Kawaki, so a clash between those two just sounds like peak action. Code would retreat here though, and the attention of Shikamaru and Naruto would turn to Kawaki. Shikamaru would show some snake behavior here in this chapter. There would be a bit of an argument between Naruto and him about what to do with Kawaki. Shikamaru was ready to kick my boy to the curb for killing a comrade, especially with little to no hesitation. Naruto though would stay real and remind Shikamaru that Kawaki is his family now. Not only that, but this was Boruto's choice as well. Shikamaru, the snake, would continue though and make a valid point that Kawaki has now made it clear he'll do anything for his goals. The conversation would continue and Naruto would make it clear, even with his other son dead in his arms, that no matter what anyone says or what he does, Kawaki is family. And it's a damn shame Kawaki wasn't awake to hear any of this, because Naruto was really spitting for him. Naruto being as real as he is would make a great point that if Kawaki's family won't stand for him at a time like this, then who would? And that's just facts. If your own family isn't there for you, who could you expect to be? Shikamaru the snake, looking a lot like Orochimaru now, would continue antagonizing Kawaki, but Naruto would shut him up, and just then, the hand of Boruto would rise and ball up into a fist right in front of Naruto. Boruto was back and he'd asked who was killed. Before there's any confusion, I was joking about the whole snake thing with Shikamaru. He's a very logical person, and so when there's a threat or unpredictable variable, for him it makes sense to kind of get rid of it. Not only that, but his perspective serves as a balance with Naruto's. It wouldn't be realistic if someone just had their son murdered and everyone was saying it's alright, forgive the killer. So I do appreciate Shikamaru here despite siding with Naruto in the end. Anyway, to everyone's surprise, Boruto was back now, and he'd quickly let them know that it was rude to write him off like that. Seeing his son was somehow alive, Naruto would tear up and begin to break down, overwhelmed with joy. As Shikamaru began to process Boruto's return, Boruto would further rip his already torn shirt, revealing a mark. Where there was a gaping hole in his chest, there was now no wound and only a black mark. A familiar fog would appear and Boruto would quickly be face to face with Momoshiki. With no hesitation, Boruto would ask what was going on, and Momoshiki would begin speaking. He would explain what we already know, that if his vessel were lost, like Ishiki, he would be gone from this world. A vessel is an anchor to the world of the living. He'd continue stating that Boruto is his sole priceless vessel, and so he cannot afford to lose Boruto. Basically, he saved Boruto because saving Boruto would be saving himself. Boruto wouldn't really respond to this, but would ask next about the wound and how he was saved. Momoshiki would explain that had he not interfered, Boruto would have been, of course, dead. He lost a ton of blood, and his heart and lungs were destroyed. We'd then see a flashback of the familiar fog appearing while Naruto was holding Boruto's lifeless body earlier. Momoshiki had appeared, and using his abilities, he closed Boruto's wound. He resuscitated Boruto using part of the karma. Essentially, 82% of Boruto's karma had been extracted, and once the remaining 18% was finished, it would then be possible for Momoshiki to resurrect. The issue with this though is that of course it would become impossible if Boruto had died before it was completed. So faced with no choice, Momoshiki had to rewrite the remaining 18% into Boruto's DNA. In short, instead of using the 18% that was meant for himself, Momoshiki used it to create data that would fix Boruto's body. So with how the 18% was used, it is now impossible for Momoshiki to resurrect. It's not too complicated, but at the same time, it's kind of like anime logic. But really what it is Boruto can't have 100% of Momoshiki's data extracted into him. He can never be that perfect vessel now. However, Boruto's happiness in hearing this would be short-lived. Momoshiki would add a warning to all of this. In the end, the extraction was completed, and Boruto is now 100% Otsutsuki. While the data was rewritten, it did originally start out as Otsutsuki data. Boruto is now a pure, genuine Otsutsuki. It sounds cool, but Momoshiki would state that this only signifies one thing: he's ready to be sacrificed to the 10 Tails for the sake of Code's plan. This still sounded good to Boruto because it meant they just had to be Code. There was another warning though. This was a one-time trick. The next time Boruto dies, it will be the real thing. And it's good to have this confirmed because it would be somewhat corny to know death is no longer a possible reality. Before Momoshiki would depart from this conversation, there was one more thing on the mind of Boruto though. When they spoke like this the first time, Momoshiki had warned him that he would lose everything. And this was something Boruto remembered and held on to until now, where he could ask about it. This near-death experience was not what the prediction was about. That was something levels beyond this that even Momoshiki could not comprehend. He would however state that it would be soon. That time is near. Momoshiki would then begin laughing, and Boruto looked visibly concerned, and who can blame him? With the end of the chapter, we see Code back with Ada discussing plans to get to Amato. Code would explain that he's already made preparations, and we see Shikamaru and the others. It appears Code has placed a marking somewhere on Shikamaru, which he can later use to arrive in Konoha, essentially like a Trojan horse kind of situation. And what did I tell you earlier? Shikamaru the snake. Kidding. Anyway, a lot is happening right now. If I was Boruto, I'd be terrified of course of what's to come next, but as a reader, I can't help but be excited knowing that the prophecy is close. Momoshiki clearly isn't exactly Boruto's friend, but I wouldn't be all too surprised if the two end up with a Kurama-Naruto type of relationship. Something I can't say I want, but I wouldn't hate it or anything like that. Let us know in the comments what you think, and where do you think Kawaki and Boruto's relationship goes from here? While both essentially have karmas acting as weapons only, Kawaki is being manipulated by Amato for reasons we've yet to find out. Things have improved slightly, but there's still a lot to unfold. With that said, hope you enjoyed the video. Please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, notifications on to never miss an upload. Until next time, keep that plot armor on you. I'm KJ. Have a great day. Goodbye.